I'm actually at a work event tonight.
All right. Good evening, including you Marines who are celebrating your birthday. I'm assuming there's 3 of you that aren't probably drinking beers tonight at the most. We have a special guest on here tonight. His name is, we're just going to go by Carson, and that's it. I'll let him introduce himself. And we're going to talk about a little bit on the resume, touch on that, and get his perspective, which is going to be very reminiscent of what you've heard from us. And then he's going to show you some new tools tonight on ONET that are very, very helpful as far as job outlooks and salaries and the infamous, I'm a veteran that can do anything, to kind of narrow that focus down a little bit. So he's going to show you guys some tools tonight. So Carson, would you like to introduce yourself and give everybody a little bit about you?
Well, happy early Veterans Day to everybody out there. You know, I know this is one of those days that we always get told, you know, thank you for your service, but, you know, from one veteran to another, I think it's more important that we say that to each other, because in this group, I think we're really trying to help each other find those right opportunities that will expand on our talents. So my name is Jarrett Carson. I just go by Carson normally. With 20 years in the military, you kind of forget you have a first name. My daughter showed up to kindergarten and they asked her dad's first name, and she said Sergeant, because that's all she had ever heard someone call me. So she thought that was my first name. So tonight we're going to kind of go over a PowerPoint that I labeled, you know, how to utilize all the tools available. And I think a lot of times we use tools that aren't, that we use them over and over and over without realizing there's more tools available. So general outline, I'm going to give you a short introduction. We're going to talk about a short purpose, very briefly hit resumes and cover letters. We're going to talk primarily on ONET and ONET military crosswalk. A lot of times people don't realize that their MOS actually converts to a civilian job. You know, it may not be direct, it may be pieces of your job connect to 3 different jobs, but a lot of times that's what employers are looking for, is someone who could be a multi-tool. What can I put you in place and have you run 3 different teams with? Then how does that actually affect our ability to request and talk about salary? That's one of the questions that a lot of people are afraid to ask is, you know, how much does this position pay? Because they don't usually put it in the job description, but you should feel comfortable knowing in there, you know, going into the interview and knowing what your value is. So military experience, I served 20 years in the U.S. Army, 10 years active duty, 10 years AGR. I was fortunate enough to do 19 of my 20 years here at Fort Richardson, Alaska. So I went from E2 to E8 in the same command. So I was very fortunate. I spent a lot of time as airborne infantry, personnel, mortuary affairs, recruiter, and then finished my time as a recruiting NCOIC. And that's where I got my real passion and love for personnel and HR. So I spent 2 years as an associate professor in an associate's degree program, teaching college for HR programs. I've been in Alaska USA Credit Union for 4 years. I was in the department for a couple of months as a trainer, went to compliance manager, went to risk manager, and then they've recently just developed me a new position that I'm in today, so I can develop for my next role. I have a bachelor's degree with a concentration in marketing. I have a master's with a concentration in leadership, and I'm currently about a year out from graduating from a doctorate program with a concentration in human resources. So the purpose, to provide veterans with the tools necessary to not just find the employment that you need today, but the career that you desire. And I think that's where we're really trying to focus on, getting you the tools that are going to make your resume stand out against anybody else. So provide a summary of what a resume is, how to build an effective resume, how to use an effective cover letter, and then use all the programs to optimize your career finding efforts. So resumes, the first thing that I really try to focus on when I'm teaching people how to write resumes is it's a physical representation of your performance, of your work. But one of the key things that I find in a resume is people just write down their job descriptions. This is what I was supposed to do over this 2 years that I worked in this job. Employers don't want to see what you were supposed to do. They want to see what you did. So I commonly use an acronym to help, you know, in military people, we understand acronyms better, I think, than most of our civilian counterparts. So an acronym, AIR, A-I-R, action, impact, result. What did you do? What did the impact of what you did have on the organization? And then what was the final result? Put in numbers, figures, statistics, percentages. Put in major projects that you worked on. You know, tell them what you did, not what you were supposed to do. One of the most common job descriptions that most of us have in our job descriptions is other duties as assigned. If you put that on your resume, you have failed. So How do I tell an employer what I can do? How do I tell an employer what I'm worth? How do I show an organization my value? So one of those that you can do is using an effective cover letter, using an effective resume. And if we got time at the end, I'll show you my cover letter that I use, and it probably will stand out and it'll probably look different than anything you've ever seen before. But I want to get into how do I build my resume? Well, one of the most important things that we're going to talk about tonight is ONET and ONET Military Crosswalk. So this is a great program, and the reason that I align with these programs better than anything else is both of these are ran by the Department of Labor. So when it starts to talk about salary at the bottom of this website, you can trust that these salaries are more in line with what the industry is paying in your area because these are required by the Department of Labor. Each organization has to provide their financial statistics on pay and salary to the Department of Labor every year. So you can actually look at these and see what the industry is paying. Understanding that not-for-profits and nonprofits will pay lower than a for-profit will within that same margin. So me working at a credit union, it's a not-for-profit. So as a compliance manager, I will make less than my counterpart working at a bank because a bank is a for-profit. The key difference is I have better benefit packages at a credit union because of their structure, their design. So we're going to jump into ONET first. So this is what ONET looks like. And so in this PowerPoint, I've given you the website address, but you can just type in ONET in Google. This will pop up. If you want to get to the military site, you have to type in ONET military, and it'll pop up the crosswalk. Now, both of the searchable functions are the same in both sites. So I'll start in the military site first. So let's throw in a couple of MOSs and see how they pop up. And again, you can search these MOSs by branch. I can say Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, Navy. I can throw anything that I want. So let's say, since it is the Marine Corps birthday, let's say Marine Corps Infantry. If I don't know the nomenclature for it, it'll show me. 0301 is Basic Infantry Officer. So it starts to show you all the different pieces where these actually can turn into job classifications. So let's say that you want to work in law enforcement. How does the infantry turn into correctional officers and jailers? So these are some of the common skills that you learn in the infantry that you can actually transition into a resume, things that you have those abilities. These are common tasks that a correctional officer will perform. Conduct head counts to ensure that each prisoner is present. Now that's not something that you do as an infantry officer. You don't walk around and do head counts, but when you're doing an after action review, when you're doing your sit reps, that's what you're doing there. You can turn that military experience directly into that same process. If you're doing a mission while you're deployed and you lose count of one of your soldiers, that's the same as them losing count of a prisoner. So in that situation, you want to make sure that you understand how can I correlate this to that job skill, that job function. So again, these are all the tasks that I would then try to correlate to my experience in the military and try to draw on those connections. So you can look at this and say, these are all the tasks that are predominantly in this job classification. Then you go down and you start talking about KSAs. So then employers are going to use KSAs as a reference tool to try to see what knowledge you have about the job, what skills you possess that make you an asset to the organization, and what abilities do you possess that can help you actually do the job. So you can actually drop this down and start seeing some of the KSAs. Public safety and security. In the infantry, that's really what you do 90% of the time. English language, customer service and personal service, computer and electronics, skills, active listening, monitoring, critical thinking. One of the big things that we try to focus on in the military is you have to be able to think on your feet, and you do muscle memory, so everything becomes a regimented process. Abilities. There's all these different abilities. Work activities, detailed work content. So you can then start seeing, now how do I relate to my peers? So if I only have a high school diploma, then I'm in that 89 percentile of everybody in that group pretty much has a high school diploma at a minimum. So if you're trying to go into it and say, well, I don't have a degree, well, let's look at really what percentage of that job career has a degree. Only 9% have a post-secondary certificate, and only 2% have an associate's degree. So if you used your GI Bill and you have a bachelor's degree, you've already set yourself up to say, I'm in that top 1%. Now I need to write my resume to meet all the knowledge, skills, and abilities. But now I need to start looking at how that is going to correlate into pay. So I'm going to pick on Chuck here for a second. Chuck, where are you located at?
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
So let's change this to Minnesota. So I can say, I want to see how this looks as a job in Minnesota. Now, right now, it's saying that there's a small decline in this profession over the next 5 to 10 years, a small decline. That's not bad. But let's look at Minnesota on how the pay looks. So this is your United States average, and this is Minnesota. So you can see Minnesota starts you out at a base salary considerably higher than the United States average. Now, if I'm in that, if I had 10 years of military experience and I had a bachelor's or an associate's degree, I can start looking to put myself kind of in this range here between, I would say, 57,000 and 62,000. So now I can walk in and have some confidence saying, I think that I'm worth this. And I have information to prove that. I have 10 years worth of experience that is relatable. I have more qualifications than they're asking for. So now I understand, what does this job pay in Minnesota versus on the national average. So you go in with education, with information to defend your position, saying, I believe that I'm worth 57,000. Now, I wouldn't go in there saying that. You know, in any negotiation, there's 3 numbers. There's the number that you want, there's the number they want to pay you, and then there's the number you're going to get. So go in with that understanding that this is all a negotiation. Go in, throw a number out. What's the worst they can say? No. No one has died from an interview from hearing the word no.
Yeah.
So go in and throw it out. If they say, hey, you know what? We start everybody at this. If that's their policy, then you should be pretty happy with that, because they at least have a pay structure and a pay policy. That's a good thing to have, because then you know that there's a normal growth. In the military, we know that every January, there's a potential for a pay increase. We know that every time you hit an anniversary, there's a potential for a pay increase. Most organizations that have a pay structure, they follow along the same line. So if they say, hey, everybody starts at this, but we'll look at seeing what percentage we can give you above that, this is where that conversation starts. ONET is one of the greatest resources because it starts to then break out, you know, the different areas. So you can see Duluth, Grand Forks, Minneapolis, St. Paul. So it starts to give you breakouts of the different areas, because in a state like Minneapolis, you may have different breakouts for different areas.
Mm-hmm.
In Alaska, Anchorage, in the prisons, they're going to pay different than they do in Bethel, because Bethel, everything has to be flown in or barged in. So it's good to know that different areas of your state have different demographics and different pay scales. So let's jump in and let's do another MOS that's probably more kind of blue collar. I know that's one thing that we wanted to really focus on. So has anybody got any suggestions for?
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you were breaking down the previous job, the education part, and there was a small percentage in that career field who had post-secondary certificates, I think every vet comes out of their experience, their first enlistment period, with a handful of certificates. Would those count? Would those count towards having that? I mean, you got training, you got this, the other.
You're going to have a lot, like your mechanics will come out with all of the training needed, all the hours needed for an ASC certification. So if they go and actually test for their ASC certification, that would be called as a certification for that specific thing there. If you're an electrician, a lot of times you'll have the hours needed to go and apply for an IEBW type of vocational certificate, and they'll exempt you on those hours.
Okay.
So yes, that military training transfers over directly to a lot of different professions. Usually you'll go to like your different work unions and ask them, hey, I have this qualification, and then you'll give them your ARCH transcript. That will actually show all the hours that normally go towards that work in that profession. NCOERs, stuff like that. So ART is a great tool. If you make sure that you have that when you transition over, you can get a lot of that stuff there. So let's do that. Let's do mechanic.
Here's one. Okay, after that, a truck driver seems to be a pretty common job as well.
So because I was a recruiter, I know a lot of the MOSs. So with the 88 mics, a lot of times you get your MCDL. Now, you can actually, like here in the state of Alaska, if you go and get your MCDL, you take it over to one of these trucking companies who actually do like OJT, they'll actually give you all the hours and they'll give you all the qualifications and send you down to take your CDL certification. And most MCDLs come out of the military with HAZWOPER, HAZMAT, the HAZDEX, all those pieces come into that play. All of those add value because then that's certificates they don't have to pay for you to go get. So now 88 mics and 88 Novembers, they kind of interchange. You know, usually at like E7, E8, you can kind of transition into the 88
guy, right? A November.
Correct. Well, that's where your transportation managers come in, stuff like that. So let's call them heavy and trailer truck drivers. So let's look at that, and then we can throw in a state. So knowing kind of what 88 mics do, check vehicle to ensure the mechanical safety and emergency equipment is in good working order. That's what they do on their pre-checks. They do that every day.
So Carson, here's one thing that I see every time when I get someone that sends me a resume. I'm sure Pete gets it a million times more than me, but these guys will literally take that line and put it on their damn resume. How would you use that to build a resume, that piece? Can you explain that to these guys?
I'll show you my resume right here and how I did it. So I'll go down to one of my military times here. So corporate recruiting supervisor. So assisted in the direct management of state marketing budget that exceeded more than $500,000 annually, developed policies to establish budget requirements, accounting procedures, and accountability of marketing funds with no losses. So just saying that I'm responsible for the state marketing budget is what I would put if I was going to do just that basic line. I'm responsible for A. Okay, but you can see there that there's an action. What did I do? What did the impact of what I do have on the organization? And then what was the overall result? I had no losses of $500,000 annually for 5 years. No losses. That's how you start to write those bullets. So if I was going to write a bullet specifically for that, check vehicles to ensure the mechanical safety, responsible for the direct, responsible for vehicle maintenance, safety, and emergency equipment with more than 50,000 driving hours with 0 losses, 0 safety incidents.
There you go.
Perfect.
I would
quantify,
add in,
guys. Quantify, just like Carson just said. Everything.
Action, impact, results. Continuously followed all appropriate safety procedures and ensuring that safety was a priority at all times. 0 safety violations.
Hey, by the way, the Air Force uses the air all the time. That's their deal. Yeah.
Well, I was in charge of evaluations for the military, and so in 1 year I would review normally more than 4,000 evals, and so I got good at developing my own process of how to write those, and that's one thing that I teach now. So if you look at this, all these different tasks and all these different pieces, you can actually start to look at this and say, what did I do that's directly related to that civilian job, and how can I make this match? And when you're building a master resume, the things that I try to tell people the most is, just because I was a truck driver doesn't mean that that's the only thing I did. In every job that I had a leadership component. So I wrote leadership bullets to that. I had safety bullets written to that. I had program development bullets. I had, different bullets that fit into multiple areas. So when we start writing that summary of skills, it doesn't need to be something that's specific to one job. It's, what are the intangibles that I bring to the organization? How do I stand out amongst my peers? So, Peter, where are you at? We're going to look at your area for truck drivers.
Well, I'm in Minneapolis, let's say.
Oh, okay.
Let's do Nebraska. Something
okay.
in the
Yeah, do Omaha.
Yeah.
So if we look here, 56% of the group has high school diplomas, 19% have less than a high school diploma, and 15% have post-secondary certificates, which is that CDL. It would be some other truck driving certifications that they have. So let's go down here and let's look for Nebraska. Now, if you see here, this has an average growth of 4 to 6%. So it's average right now. So it's actually good. So they fall pretty much in line with the national averages. So if I'm a brand new truck driver and I have, the basic number of hours, I'm kind of looking to come in between 30 and 35,000. But if you spent 5 years in the military and that's all you did was truck driving, how many combat tours did you? How many combat miles did you drive? Put that here. You could put yourself in the middle of that, because now I don't have, 2 years of experience. I have 10 years. Granted, it's not driving on U.S. highways, but I guarantee you that what you drove and what you did and the cargo you hauled, way more valuable than an iPhone in a trailer.
Mhm.
But you have to be able to defend how you feel you meet those qualifications. So then we go down here and we start looking at Grand Island. Okay, it's a little bit lower. We have Lincoln. Okay, kind of in the middle, northeast, northwest. Sioux City, Iowa. Omaha, 33,000, so it's got a little higher. So you could see what all of your markets look like in Nebraska. And you could do this by just looking up the job, either MOS, or you could type in truck driver. So if I type in truck driver, it's going to give me 19 Fox, tank driver, 19 Hotel, 19 Lima, 52 Fox. Type in transportation. It's going to start breaking out even more. Transportation specialist in the Navy, Air Force.
Here's one, Carson, which seems to be a new hot trend for vets. And I'm guessing a satellite technician, technical satellite communication person.
25 Sierra, satellite
Yeah.
operator.
I'm guessing. So cybersecurity seems to be one of these things a lot of these guys are getting their certs in right now. CISSPs, and what's that other one, Pete, that's been real common here?
I want to say cybersecurity. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So if I type in cybersecurity, security management specialist, information security analyst, first line supervisor, okay. Computer network specialist, so you can have like the 25 Bravos, 25 Sierras, 25 Romeos.
I think that information security analyst that you had down a little bit at 02779.
Right here.
Yeah, that's going to be a little.
So you can see how many MOSs that one falls into. So I've already clicked the hyperlink, so you can see how many times that one falls into different MOSs. And that's why, if we look at some of these people's experience, if you've done more than 2 MOSs in your time in the military, type both of those in and start looking at what jobs they align to. So if I see that I did 5 different jobs and 3 jobs align with all 3 of my 5 MOSs, then that probably means that I'm really qualified in all of those, and I could be a multi-tool that I can go into the organization. They can say, hey, I need you to do A, B, and C, and here's what I bring. And make sure you talk about that in the interview. So let's see what the tasks are. Develop a plan to safeguard computer files against accidental and unauthorized modification, destruction, disclosure, and meet emergency data processing needs. Right now, how many data breaches have happened? Every company is focusing on, continuation of operations plan and disaster, recovery. This is a major focus. So every company is putting more money into cybersecurity. Monitor current reports and computer viruses to determine when the upgrade for virus protection systems. So these are all things that kind of fit along with that career field. Sorry, both of my executives have been hitting me up already. Yeah. So, because here in Alaska, it's only 3:52, so it's still mid-work day for me. So let's talk about some of these KSAs. You need to have that basic computer and electronics, English language, administration and management, engineering, telecommunications, customer and personal service. And again, just open these up and start looking through them. And if you say, hey, where does this fall? Critical thinking, it starts to then show you how many other jobs that this aligns with. So this website is really, really interactive. It'll allow you to kind of go down some rabbit holes if you don't really pay attention to what you're looking at. 53% of this career field has a bachelor's degree. 23% have a post-bachelor certificate. So what that is I've already gotten my bachelor's and I go back to get another certificate. Say I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, but I went and got a certificate in cybersecurity. So what you're doing is you're really creating a second bachelor's without going through all your prerequisites, is what that is. Nice. And then 13% has an associate's degree. So if I walk in and I say, hey, you're required to have an associate's degree, but I prefer a bachelor's. How does that add value? And how do I acknowledge that? And how do I bring that to the forefront? Remember, if I get 100 resumes and only 5 people met all of my preferred requirements, I'm only going to really look at those 5 resumes, because I'm not going to be able to look through 105 resumes and do 105 interviews. I've got to find a way to curtail that down a little bit. So how do I make sure that my preferred skills get brought to the forefront? And I have a tool for everybody. And I think you're going to like it because it's going to stand out and it's going to shock you that it's this simple.
Ooh.
So let's talk about Alaska. Let's do this. I want to show you where I live and show you what it looks like here. So much faster than average growth, 11% or higher. That's a good number. You want to sometimes go into a career field where you're going to be paid above your peers, where the growth is faster. So in Alaska, our beginning salary is a little bit higher, but our median salary is lower than the national average. And our high value is right around the same as the national average. So you start looking at Alaska, you look at Anchorage. Most of your IT jobs are going to be in Anchorage, Fairbanks, or Juneau, or Wasilla. That's just where they're at. But you can see that breakout right there.
You know what I like about this, Carson, is we get this a lot. I'm working with a guy named JT right now, who's a captain out of the CAV unit. And he's coming back to Minnesota here real soon, but he doesn't really know where he wants to live, where he wants to go. He just knows that he wants to come back to Minnesota where his wife's from. So, you know, geographically speaking, I think this is a win for these guys that spent 20 years like yourself in the military.
Yeah, so many guys just don't know where to start.
Yeah.
It's like stepping into another planet.
Well, like what they can do is they can go down and say, hey, look, I want to look at my MOS. I want to look at the job that I want. What do I want to be when I grow up? And you can go down and you can click on each state and see where the projected growth is going to happen. You can say, hey, if I'm from Minnesota, how does it actually look in Wisconsin? You know, I don't mind driving 6 hours to get home to see family, but is the growth in Wisconsin worth the travel time? Sometimes
Yes,
it might be.
South Dakota and Wisconsin are freedom right now around us.
So
well,
here's one thing that I did when I built my cover letter that I think, if I want to make myself stand out against my peers, this is my cover letter. Your organization seeks somebody that has experience in human resource experience. I possess a wide range of HR experience. I spent several years as a recruiter for the military and have a very strong grasp on developing recruiting processes, developing lead generation programs, and conducting interviews. Additionally, I have experience as a college professor and focus on teaching students in the HR program. Lastly, I am currently pursuing a doctorate in human resources and feel that will complement my bachelor's in marketing and master's in leadership. I've had people offer me interviews just off of my cover letter because their job experience is saying, hey, I need somebody with HR experience, training experience, communication skills. Don't just say, I would like to interview for the job. Sell yourself in the cover letter. If they never even get past your cover letter and they're like, you know what, this sounds like the person we need to interview, this is how you sell yourself. Put it into a table format. Make it to where people see you and say, I have to interview this person.
Okay, Carson, so we are down a couple minutes here. Any best practices that you would suggest that these guys use over the next week? Just one thing that you would say, hey, just try this for the next 4 days or the rest of the week. And if you have success, cool.
It's using ONET. Using ONET to write your resume, to talk about your experiences and make those connections to the jobs. You need to be able to match your experience to their expectations. If you can't do it in the resume, you're not gonna be able to do it in the interview. Your resume sets your mind in the right path to have those discussions during the interview. If you hand in the same resume every time, you're gonna have the same outcome on those interviews. It's going to be an interview for a job, not a career.
I like it. Pete?
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people think that resume, it's a tough thing to do. It's kind of like drilling your own teeth. But and then once they do it, that they don't have to keep doing it, and they hand in the same resume all the time. And that's just it's a no-no. Just remember, every job is a fresh new approach. They're standing to shell out $50,000, let's say $50,000 a year to the right person. Let that be you. You think it's worth it to you if that's the salary you want. to put in that kind of effort, and the ROI on that is at least in my mathematical mind, I can't calculate it. It's huge.
Sue, you're on mute. And you want to jump in on this?
No, I'm actually really impressed with this tool. God knows over the years, MOSs have changed, the numbers have changed, and to be able to do a keyword search, if you're not sure what the current MOS or designation is actually pretty cool. And there are some jobs out there that don't actually have an MOS designation. They're 00 go rules. I don't know if they still exist, but they used to. So this is actually a pretty cool tool. I think that people could definitely use this to better their resume.
I tried this and my MOS didn't pop up. Here's one for you, Carson. 93 Fox. Any idea what that is? No, I want to hit the recruiter button on you. 93
Fueler.
Fox, man. Huh?
Fueler. No. 93 Fox?
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you. I knew what our state had. It was 92s, but 93,
All right, put it in your quick search and see if it pops up, because it didn't when I was
probably MOS decoder.
93. Yeah.
No match.
Artillery meteorological crew member. Pretty high speed, low drag, huh? That was my last MOS. But I thought that now it's like a 13 Tango or something like that. But when I took a look at what was listed in there, it was pretty interesting, because there are a lot of things that actually convert into what I do now. So even though I'm 20 plus years out of the Army, there's still a lot of stuff that will help me if I use this tool to just jump off with the resume, because that's the big thing, is that first step, guys. It's, where do I start? Here's where you start. You go to ONET, you find a career or a job or a couple things that look good to you. You take some of the information here, you go grab a resume builder that we've talked about 50 times on here, and you just start plugging away. So this ONET is a fantastic place to start if you just kind of, I don't know which direction to go.
This is a great start. I would just say that when you're building a resume, try not to make it look like a menu. Try not to make it look like official correspondence. It needs to be clear that it's a resume. Don't put your picture on it. Don't put flowers and side additions to it. It needs to be something very clean, very very crisp, and shows that you're serious about the job.
And the real secret is 92% of the population are not using the resume as a sales tool for themselves to market themselves. If you can do that even a little bit, you're already smoking your competition. So if you can do a couple of bullets near the top that do that action, impact, result formula, you'll be styling. You'll be getting calls.
So here's what I did for my starters, so my summary or my profile. I bolded the top one because I want people to know that I'm doing a doctorate, just because I'm trying to stand out. Extensive experience in developing, planning, designing, and maintaining complex management programs designed to increase department morale, accuracy, productivity, communication, efficiencies, and business functions. I can say that about 10 of my past jobs. What's in that top portion isn't something that's specific to a job. It's what are the skills that I bring that nobody else brings to your organization. Set yourself apart.
Perfect. I think that's a great place to end this evening.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I want to say thanks, guys. I appreciate this. I was watching the recording from last week. You guys threw out some comments afterwards. I didn't realize it was on Tuesday, so I saw it on Wednesday. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come out here and speak, and I try to do as much as I can for the veteran community, because I don't think that we have enough tools and enough people fighting for the veterans.
Well, we'll give you an opportunity to do a lot for our veteran community. We want you back.
Thing, Carson, once you're invited to this, the door is always wide open for you to join in any Tuesday evening. I mean, everybody gets something from everyone out of this program. So
yeah, we kind of complement each other with regard to, if you're not the feature speaker, you're kind of complimenting the feature speaker and stuff like that. So
I think it's awesome.
And I'm going to start putting my face on my resume because this thing's pretty. So
I'm not. I'm fat, so I'm not trying to put my face on anything.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. We will, same bat time and channel, place, all that stuff next Tuesday. We'll rally here again, and maybe we'll pull Carson back in here. And we're going to have him do a half hour of just PowerPoints next time, because you guys probably miss that stuff. Anyways, have a good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Happy Veterans Day, everyone.